or promoting pickpocket protection.
If they're lost or stolen, you can get them back. Don't leave home without them.
Don't Do It Advertising, Part 2 on Under the Influence with Terry O'Reilly. Thursday morning at 11:30, 3:30 p.m. in Newfoundland and on the CBC Listen app.
You know the feeling of finding a really good podcast? Or the feeling of someone always being there, like your favorite radio show? Stream CBC Podcasts, CBC Music, and CBC Radio anytime, anywhere. Download the CBC Listen.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At noon, it's raining and 7 degrees downtown, 6 degrees with light rain in Brandon, light snow and -3 in Thompson. Manitoba is officially restoring the 1-to-1 ratio between apprentices and their supervisors. As the CBC's Ian Fraze explains, the NDP is making good on an election promise.
The NDP government promised to restore the 1-to-1 apprentice-supervisor ratio for skilled trades, and now we know when. The province announced Tuesday the ratio will take effect on October 30th. This move reverses a 2021 change by the former Progressive Conservative government. The Tories adopted a 2-to-1 ratio, but the NDP has called that unsafe and counter to the province's need to attract more skilled workers. Some construction groups have disagreed. The Winnipeg Construction Association says some companies have said they would hire fewer apprentices, while others will lay them off. The province is making exceptions to the 1-to-1 ratio on a case-by-case basis. Companies in rural and northern parts of the province can make their argument. Ian Fraze, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Winnipeg's mayor says a new funding model with the province is necessary if the city is going to keep up with growth. Mayor Scott Gillingham was speaking at the 2024 Leaders Forum on growing the economy this morning. He says Winnipeg has grown by 65,000 people in the past 3 years. Gillingham says that puts pressure on roads, police, and fire services, and it can take years before the city sees any increased revenues in property taxes.
A funding model that will reward the city with a portion of the growth of the economy is something that will benefit everybody.
Gillingham admits a new funding model has been requested by mayors going back decades, but he says he's confident recent talks with the province will be productive. The Heart and Stroke Foundation says the person who went into cardiac arrest after running a marathon is lucky there were people around who knew what to do. The man had just crossed the finish line in the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service half marathon when he collapsed. He's in hospital now after the race director grabbed a defibrillator and started CPR. Andrew Lotto with the foundation says it's more common than people might think.
There are 60,000 sudden cardiac arrests that happen out of hospital every year in Canada, which is 1 every 9 minutes. And the thing that's probably more shocking to people is that more than half of those, or nearly half of those, happen to people under the age of 65.
The half marathon was a benefit for Heart and Stroke. Lotto says only 1 in 10 people will survive a cardiac arrest outside of hospital. He says it's important for people to act quickly and start pumping someone's chest and call 911 to get help. With the House sitting again following the Thanksgiving break, all the talk on Parliament Hill is focused on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his future. CBC News has previously reported that some Liberal MPs are mounting a campaign aimed at getting Trudeau to step down, and it's forcing members of the Liberal cabinet to issue public statements about their leader. Janice McGregor has more.
You'd expect ministers serving in Justin Trudeau's cabinet to express their loyalty, and they have been. Even as she announced her departure yesterday to run instead for the mayor's chair in Sherbrooke next year, Revenue Minister Marie-Claude Bibeau, for example, made a point of saying she believes history is going to be kind to Justin Trudeau. Health Minister Mark Holland, who's staying put, delivered a similar message to reporters on the Hill yesterday.
This is a guy who day after day after day gets attacked and punched and denigrated and and he just steps up every day.
But Innovation Minister François-Philippe Champagne, who's thought to be exploring a run maybe for the Liberal leadership himself, should it become vacant, sounded more responsive to the concerns in caucus.
It comes from a good place, I think. It comes from concerns that people have looked at the polls.
These conversations about the party's future are set to play out behind closed doors over the next 2 days. We'll see what's contained and constrained and what spills out. Janice McGregor, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now to the U.S. presidential election, which is just 2 weeks from today, and that has both campaigns focusing on a late campaign push. Karen Pauls has more from Washington.
Vice President Kamala Harris is in Washington today and not on the campaign trail, but her interview on NBC airs tonight. And her running mate, Tim Walz, is campaigning in Wisconsin, where early voting begins today. He'll be at a rally this afternoon with former President Barack Obama, and then they'll split up for some more events this evening. Now, the Harris campaign is hoping her whirlwind swing state tour with anti-Trump Republican Liz Cheney will continue to reverberate. The Harris campaign hopes Cheney can be their bridge to millions of Republican women, especially in those crucial swing state suburbs. Former President Donald Trump has a roundtable with Latinos in Florida this morning, and then he'll be back in North Carolina tonight. With just 2 weeks left until Election Day, an estimated 17 million Americans have already voted. More will get the chance starting today. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Washington.
And that is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 12:30. In Winnipeg today, cloudy, rain ending early this afternoon. Few scattered showers continuing. Temperature falling to 4. Wind northwest 30, gusting to 50.
Good afternoon and welcome to Radio Noon for Tuesday, October 22nd. Bit of a change in the weather from yesterday, kind of drizzly and chilly out there compared to the sunny summer afternoon we had yesterday, but oh well. Coming up on the show today, our call-in, and please do call in at 204-780-0893, is all about pickleball. It's very popular in Manitoba, and now it's gone mainstream, including pickleball franchises that are coming to Manitoba sometime soon. So we want to know, how is that sitting with the pickleball community? And what's your opinion of pickleball, the game, its growth, and the health benefits? Have you got a pickleball story to share? When you first played? Are you a convert from another sport? Call us after the 12:30 news. But first, Manitoba's making changes to help protect workers in training. Restoring the 1-to-1 apprentice-to-journeyman ratio will come into effect October 30th. The changes to the apprenticeship and certification general regulations will help ensure high-quality supervision and stronger supports for trainees. The 1-to-1 ratio was first put in place after Michael Skanderberg died while working unsupervised on the job in 1999. Jamie Moses, the Minister for Economic Development, Investment and Trade, said that ratio was removed by the previous Conservative government. Here he is speaking at the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers Training Centre this morning.
The reason that we're making this change is very simple. Manitobans deserve to go to work in safe work environments and come home safely from those workplaces at the end of the day. This shift to 1-to-1 ratios will ensure that workers have a training environment that is supported by journey people to completion, so that they can build on their careers and help to build us a province that we deserve. Proper supports and supervision are necessary, and that's part of what will ensure workers come home safely at the end of the day. In addition, highly skilled workforce and helping apprentices get to completion is essential, and getting to that Red Seal worker is what's needed as a part of growing our active and dynamic economy. As we look to revitalize our apprenticeship program, we will make sure that this ratio change will continue to always work in a modernized apprenticeship system in Manitoba. Our goal is to ensure that apprentices can be efficient, work easily and quickly, navigate opportunities and careers, and build their skills and work right here in Manitoba. That being said, we know that there are a variety of regions around the province where there are different needs, rural and northern areas. And so we will work individually with those areas to ensure that our apprenticeship system works effectively right across the province. And as we continue to implement these positive changes in promoting safety and high-quality education for apprentices in Manitoba, we will continue to listen to industry.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dave McPhail, and I am the business manager of IBW 2085. We represent electrical workers on industrial, commercial, and institutional job sites since 1960. When the 2-to-1 ratio came into effect December 20th, 2020, the result was catastrophic to the Red Seal electricians in Manitoba. Many Red Seals were laid off during COVID, and when the work started again in Manitoba, some contractors stacked their crews with double the apprentices, leaving the qualified, skilled people waiting for jobs. The only logical reason for having more apprentices than Red Seals is for cost savings. Quality of installation and training requires more Red Seal installers to be on a job site. The previous government claimed increasing 2-to-1 would double the number of journey persons in the province and reduce the red tape, but this had an opposite effect. This created greater unemployment for skilled workers and decreased the quality of training and installation. Earlier this year, IBW 2085 filed a Freedom of Information request that confirmed that there has been a 30% reduction in electrical apprentices receiving their Red Seal since the 2-to-1 ratio came into effect. It is very encouraging to have a government follow the data and correct the course. Electrical is a highly technical trade where proper supervision can mean life or death.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cindy Skanderberg, and I have been asked to speak here today. I applaud this change with all of my being. First of all, I'd like to introduce to you our son, Michael William Skanderberg. He's age 19, and I'm going to give you a little bit of history that led up to Wednesday, December the 8th, 1999, when our family received the fateful phone call that changed our lives forever. In 1998-99, Michael had attended the Keewatin Community College, which is now known as the University of North, receiving his diploma with honors in the basic electrical one-year program. Michael was so excited and so eager to start his chosen career. He secured employment with Clearwater Electric and was promised that it would lead him being able to start his apprenticeship with Clearwater. We found out later, after Michael was killed, that Clearwater wasn't even accredited by the province to apprentice anyone. Michael had been working for them at the time for about 2.5 months. Clearwater had the contract at the Edward Schreier School in Beausejour, removing all the old light ballasts and installing new ones. The company worked live. Time was money. Michael entered that photocopy room without experience, without supervision, without schematics, and without the knowledge that there was 347 volts surging through those wires. He never questioned the job. He was instructed to complete because he was so eager to please his boss and to do what he was told. In one brief second, our son was dead. His life was over. A loud scream was heard. His co-worker found him slumped over a chair with one contact being completely blown out of his eye. Increasing profits by working live and cutting corners? Was that the cost of doing business? In the past 25 years since Michael was tragically killed, workplace safety laws have definitely improved in Manitoba, and it's unthinkable to imagine the journeyman-apprentice ratio being anything other than 1-to-1. If all of the improved safety regulations had been in place in 1999, our son Michael would still be alive. So on behalf of all of my family, I would personally like to thank Minister Moses, Premier Wab Kinew, and the NDP government for their commitment in ensuring the people of Manitoba return home safely every day from their jobs, and that no other family has to endure what we have had to for the past 25 years.
That was Cindy Skanderberg speaking at a media conference this morning. Before that, we heard Dave McPhail, business manager for the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And for more on this story, go to our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Your local news at your fingertips.
CBC News has a local news app made for your phone or tablet.
So don't waste time scrolling for the local stories you want. Just download the app to get the information that matters to you, when it happens,
and how you want it.
Another way to get your local news. The CBC News app. Download it today.
You are listening to CBC Radio Noon at 89.3 FM, 990 AM. I'm Laurie Hoogstraten, filling in for Janet Stewart. Coming up after the 12:30 news, pickleball is very popular in Manitoba, and now it's gone mainstream, including pickleball franchises coming to Manitoba sometime soon. How does that sit with you or the pickleball community? And what's your opinion of pickleball? The game, its growth, the health benefits? And if you've got a pickleball story to share, where you first played, or if you're a convert or want to find out more, give us a call, 204-780-0893. That's after the 12:30 news. We'll be talking to the head honcho of Pickleball Manitoba. He can answer all your questions and swap stories with you. And coming up, students and academics tackle U.S. politics and the upcoming presidential election at a public panel tonight at Brandon University, and we'll find out why what happens in the U.S. matters here. Taking a look at the forecast. Cloudy in Winnipeg today. Rain ends early this afternoon and a few scattered showers. Clearing this evening and lows of -2. And the temperature is actually not rising to anything today. It's falling. Taking a look at some temperatures around the province. Brandon is 2, Churchill is -1, in Dauphin it's 3, Gimli 6, The Pas -4. There's light snow in Thompson and -1. Winnipeg is 7 with some light rain. It is 17 minutes after 12 o'clock. What happens in the upcoming U.S. presidential election matters here. That's the message the Brandon University Politics Society hopes to send at a public panel tonight on the upcoming U.S. election. It's hosted by Brandon University and Assiniboine College. CBC's Chelsea Kemp spoke with 22-year-old student Jess Giesbrecht, president of the Brandon University Politics Society. She first asked why she thinks it's important for Manitobans to talk about American politics now.
What happens in America definitely affects us here in Canada quite a bit. We are quite close, not only geographically, but politically, socially. So there are, a lot of impacts that this election could have on us here in Canada. And, it's great to hear different perspectives on how those things are going to impact us from, the 4 different professors who will be speaking. They each have different backgrounds, different areas of expertise, and it'll be great to hear what each of them thinks about, how this will impact us and other people around the world.
What kind of conversations are you hoping to foster with the panel?
Well, we know that the politics in the U.S. right now is incredibly polarized, incredibly contentious, and we're seeing some of that here in Canada too. So I think the importance of this being a nonpartisan event, and to have, people who have all sorts of different opinions coming together and, hearing from the people who study and research this stuff. And hopefully it will, foster a kind of a sense of connection over these lines, these boundaries that we build, and hopefully all connect together just in a learning process. I've definitely heard some people correlating some things happening in the States with this election to our potential upcoming federal election, specifically with Pierre Poilievre sometimes being referred to as Donald Trump light, or the Canadian Donald Trump. And yeah, I think it definitely we will see how those two things are connected for sure.
When you guys talk in class about like the election coming up on November 5th, what do students, what do they talk about? What do they care about?
Well, we care about a lot of different things. We have, from what I've heard from students, there are social issues that are big deals. So some of the things that, you've even seen Kamala Harris and Donald Trump talk about in their debate that they had, which is, things like abortion, things like the war in the Middle East, and the Russia-Ukraine conflict, and then also domestic issues like healthcare and the economy and all those things. We're also interested in that. From what I've seen, we're interested in how it's playing out there in the U.S., but also how those things, impact us so much too. The mis and disinformation that both campaigns are, using in their campaigns, and how they're using media to, it's such an essential part of a presidential campaign these days. And yeah, we talk about that in our classes as well. And also how they are portrayed in the media themselves is a huge deal. And also I would say on social media is very interesting too. Like kind of appealing more to younger, like Gen Z voters, and trying to appear more attractive as a candidate to them, and using social media to do that. It's going to be great discussion. It's really just going to be a really great event, and yeah, definitely come by if you can.
That's Jess Giesbrecht, president of the Brandon University Politics Society. Rick Baker is assistant director of Brandon University's Department of Political Science and a speaker at tonight's panel. He explained why it's important to understand U.S. politics through a Manitoba lens.
I think that not just us, but anybody has a better appreciation of who you are when you understand it through a comparative lens, right? And so we're going to have this conversation about the United States and about the American politics, but there's all sorts of ways in which that comes back in terms of the conversations that we have about who we are. It's inevitable, right? The United States occupies such an enormous shadow, really, looming over Canada, that it has to filter into our discussion. It makes us respond to some of the things that are going on down there that otherwise we wouldn't have to. Yeah. I mean, my hope is that people come away from this with a greater sense of awareness about what's going on in the United States. But as we've been talking about, we can't understand what's going on in the United States in isolation, in a vacuum, right? We share the world's longest undefended border. We have very similar cultures. We have all sorts of things that we share. And so I guess what I want people to get out of this is a better appreciation of what's going on in American politics, but also a better appreciation of what we have in Canada and the sorts of ways in which Canada and the United States are intertwined by politics and by culture and by our media landscape and all of these different ways.
Do you hope it kind of gets people more excited for our next federal election when it happens, whenever that may be?
Oh yes, you know what? It's inevitable. People are going to be making that exact comparison. Trudeau's, his time in office is waning, and you can already see all of the people in the Liberal Party that are, taking up positions, trying to suss out where they should be when this eventually happens. So, I mean, something that I would love for people to take away from this is just more information literacy and a greater appreciation for the way international relations works and for understanding how Canada and the United States interact. That country has got so much power on the world stage that it really behooves all of us, certainly Canada, but it behooves all of us to appreciate what goes on in their politics.
Rick Baker is Brandon University's Assistant Director, Department of Political Science. The U.S. election panel takes place at 7 tonight at the Brandon University's Library's Gathering Space, and a panel of scholars will be available for discussion and a Q&A.
Breaking news happens anywhere, anytime.
Police have warned the protesters repeatedly, get back.
CBC News brings the story to you as it happens.
Hundreds of wildfires are burning.
Be the first to know what's going on and what that means for you and for Canadians.
This situation has changed very quickly.
Helping make sense of the world when it matters most. Stay in the know. CBC News.
It's 25 minutes past 12 o'clock. You're listening to Radio Noon. Typically, when first responders arrive at an emergency, it's people they're assisting. But not always. Sometimes it's livestock or wild animals that need help. Those rescues require a different approach. That's why some first responders in southern Ontario were training at a horse stable. Here they are working with the Windsor-Essex Therapeutic Riding Association.
And the horse may jump. If they bolt or pull on your hand, let go. You don't want to hang on, but otherwise, just hang tight. Try to practice that calm, confidence, and let's just see what that sort of nervous response looks like in a horse.
My name is Susan Raymond. I'm the communication officer at Equine Guelph, University of Guelph. And we're here to do some training on what's the best way to deal with a livestock or horse in an emergency situation. Most first responders have so many tools to use in emergency situations, and we really focus on welfare of the animal and safety of the people. So it could be safety of the horse owner or livestock owner, but also of anybody involved in an emergency situation. We as people, we see a horse or an animal in an emergency situation and we want to help. We might not know the best way to do it and we might put ourselves in harm's way. What we really stress on when you're dealing with animals is we train people where not to cause more injury. So we stress don't pull on legs, tails, and heads. We focus on the torso of the animal. Focus on if you're rescuing an animal, think of it, if you wouldn't do it to a person, you don't do it to an animal. So human safety always comes before animal safety. That's why we really stress get a veterinarian involved, make an assessment. Is the welfare of the animal, should it be put through the stress of a rescue, or is it in the best interest not to put it through the stress? Also the safety of people. Is it safe to actually go through with what your plan is, or maybe it's not? And that has to be done between the veterinarians and the first responders to make those informed decisions.
So what we want to do is we want to get this webbing underneath this animal. Out it goes. Dr. Riley's going to grab that end, and we're going to floss underneath this. Okay? Flossing is at roughly a 30-degree angle.
I'm Captain Daryl Dupy. I'm with the Tecumseh Fire Department. Well, this is great training. Back with the Jobin Fire, we found it very challenging to get the animals out of the barn when they're in high-stress situations. We're learning different techniques today to how to deal with that and get the animals out of danger.
My name's Kevin Kavanagh. I'm the Deputy Chief of Operations for Tecumseh Fire. Learning a lot as far as, especially we're dealing with horses right now, but stuff we've never thought of. I've never known about certain areas to approach them and some of their tendencies to kind of know when they're upset and anxiety. So we're learning the tendencies of the animals of what they're thinking when they have anxiety and stuff. So it's good stuff. We're used to putting out fires, but we're not used to how to deal with the animals when it comes time to get them out. And again, their tendencies is to go back in where there's safety, and that we need to learn how to work around that.
Prepare to haul. Haul. Stop.
Some of the people participating in a large animal training exercise for first responders at the Windsor-Essex Therapeutic Riding Association in southern Ontario.
Robins sing
can think about is money. If I'm gonna make it, if I should even try to find my way, navigate the water. Time is in question, I need help. Creator, give me courage, 'cause I'm scared as hell. Everything keeps changing, I'm unsure of myself. Don't know where I'm going, but I know just what to find. Looking for a little peace of mind.
Oh, just a little bit of Mitchell McCoon's and Courage. After the 12:30 news, it's pickleball time. Give us a call, 780-0893 to talk about pickleball. But first, the news is next.
This is CBC News. Good afternoon, I'm Josh Crabb in Winnipeg. At 12:30, 6 degrees downtown under a cloudy sky, 8 degrees in Sprague, and -3 in Dooley Lake. The NDP government will restore the 1-to-1 apprenticeship supervisor ratio for skilled trades starting October 30th. This move reverses a 2021 change by the former Progressive Conservative government. The Tories adopted a 2-to-1 ratio, but the NDP has called that unsafe and counter to the province's need to attract more skilled workers. Some construction groups have disagreed. The Winnipeg Construction Association says some companies have said they would hire fewer apprentices, while others will lay them off. Exceptions can be made for companies in rural and northern Manitoba. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham says there needs to be a new funding model so the city can keep up with growth. He was speaking at the 2024 Leaders Forum on growing the economy this morning. Gillingham says the city's population grew by 65,000 people over the past 3 years. He says that puts pressure on city services, and it takes time before that growth translates into property taxes. Gillingham is working with the province on change.
I understand the province has financial constraints, significant financial constraints as well. What we're talking about is a new funding form that will give the city access to a percentage of the growth of the economy. And as the economy grows, the city would benefit from that growth.
Gillingham admits mayors have been asking for a change for years, but he told the group he's confident in his talks with the province. Winnipeg police responded to a gun call this morning at Ellis Avenue and Sherbrooke Street. Several police cars, including the Tactical Support Unit and an ambulance, were on scene but have since left. Police tell CBC they received a call just after 8:30 about someone with a gun inside a building in the 500 block of Ellis. Traffic was blocked for about 3 hours, but roads reopened at noon. There's no word from police on any arrests or injuries. And according to recent statistics by the Heart and Stroke Foundation, about half of the cardiac arrests in Canada happen to healthy people under the age of 65. On Sunday, a runner in the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service half marathon, which was a benefit for heart and stroke, collapsed at the finish line. Quick responding organizers started CPR and found an AED machine. The runner is now in hospital recovering. Andrew Lotto with the foundation says usually only 1 in 10 people having a cardiac arrest outside hospital survive. He says that runner was lucky.
They had an AED on site and they had people trained in CPR to know what to do in the situation something would happen, which makes all the difference when an out of a hospital cardiac arrest happens. And really that's the message, is that while survival is not great, we can double the chances of survival.
Lotto says every year in Canada there are 60,000 cardiac arrests, or 1 every 9 minutes. And that is CBC News from Winnipeg. Your next local news is at 1:30.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
You're listening to CBC Radio Noon, and now I welcome Riley Lachuk, weather specialist, into the studio. Yay, Riley.
And we're welcoming a cold front.
Well, there's that.
To give you a sense, Lori, at where things have gone. Melita yesterday, 26 degrees.
26
degrees in the afternoon. Right now, 5.
Plummeting, I think.
Plummeting, yes.
Yeah.
As expected, as forecast, we're seeing this cold front sweep across the province west to east. Also responsible for bringing some of that rain that we saw through the morning hours today and really dragging our temperatures down. So east into northwestern Ontario, we're still seeing temperatures 12, 14 degrees through Dryden and Fort Francis. Dauphin and Swan River right now on the flip side of that at 4 degrees. Right now we're at 6 in Winnipeg. We'll continue to see that temperature plummet as we get through the afternoon. The rain pretty much done across southern Manitoba, the bulk of it anyway, but we will still see a few scattered showers, maybe a couple of wet flurries in the higher elevations of the Duck and the Riding Mountains back to the west. But for the most part, it's done. Do expect a pretty gray day, a breezy day with maybe a couple more showers yet to come. For northwestern Ontario, that rain moves out as we get through the afternoon hours. Starting to see some breaks in the cloud, even as late or as 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon. To the west in particular, we'll start to see some breaks in that cloud deck, but otherwise a mainly cloudy day for the rest of us today. Clearing out, high pressure sets in again once we get into Wednesday, and that's going to start to calm our winds down a bit. Tomorrow's still a bit breezy, but we'll have a much brighter day ahead, and that's the pattern that we get into as we get into Thursday into Friday, as much sunnier conditions throughout the day. So we are seeing, I guess, if you want to talk about a high temperature, 7 degrees, falling back to about 4 by the time we get to the afternoon. So pretty much what you see right now is sort of the highest that we'll get throughout the afternoon hours, at least today, before things start to drop. That drop has already happened back to the west, so 5s and 6s through the rest of the afternoon through Brandon and Dauphin, and maybe a couple of stray scattered flurries into northern Manitoba. Thompson, Gillam, both at -1. Churchill also looking at -1 this afternoon. Then we turn the page and we're back to sunnier conditions. Wednesday, Thursday, highs of 11 degrees. 10s and 9s through Friday and Saturday, and a 13 degrees Sunday with a mix of sun and clouds. So a bit of a blip in the forecast today, then we turn things around from here.
Yes, we're just going to skip winter back to
yeah, I wish.
Oh, thanks very much, Riley.
You're welcome.
That's Riley Lachak, weather specialist. And of course, you can hear him this afternoon on Up to Speed from 3 to 6. And you can hear him on CBC News at 6 as well. Recognize that sound? Pickleball, and people can't get enough of pickleball. It's that game that combines tennis, badminton, and ping pong. And pickleball, it's the kind of game it's easy to learn, but it's hard to master, and it can be played indoors and outside. It's great exercise, providing maximum fun with minimum risk to your wonky knees and the like. But pickleball has its detractors, largely because of that of the hard plastic ball. It makes quite a racket, no pun intended. So today on Radio Noon, call in at 780-0893. We want to know, how do you feel about pickleball? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Do you wish you could learn it? Do you wish there was somewhere near you to play? It's not going away. It's growing by leaps and bounds. And in fact, pickleball franchises are soon coming to our province. Pickler Clubs, which is an American enterprise, has teamed up with Winnipeg's TPC Development and plans to open 65 locations in Canada, including a couple here. We're wondering, how does that sit with the pickleball community? Is this welcome news? And what questions does it raise about accessibility, cost, location? Where would you like to see more pickleball availability? To talk all things pickleball, our call-in guest is Ted Fardo, president of Pickleball Manitoba. And Pickleball Manitoba, by the way, is a nonprofit and run by dedicated volunteers, like Ted, with a passion for pickleball. So give us a call, 204-780-0893, or you can text us at 204-588-7355. Hello, Ted.
Hello, Lori. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being with us. And it's fun to talk about pickleball, especially when we're getting to the time of year where maybe thinking of indoor exercise and things to do. So tell me, in general, how would you describe the appeal of pickleball?
Well, it's an easy game to learn, and like you said earlier, it's difficult to master, but you can play at a competitive level very quickly. It's a very social game. The proximity to your partner and your opponents and the like on the court makes it easy to communicate and laugh and have tons of fun with, as well as get a lot of exercise.
So for people who haven't seen it, can you sort of describe what a pickleball game looks like? How is it played?
Well, it's played very similar to tennis. You have a net at the center court. The court dimensions are approximately 30 by 44. You service and volley. You have to let the ball bounce on the serve before you hit it, and on the service return, it must bounce before you return it, and then you can volley it out of the air at any given time from that point on. When you start the game, you get a single serve. After that, every service or every side out creates 2 opportunities for the serving team. Games are typically played to 11 and win by 2. And that can be modified depending on time constraints, numbers, whatever you please, really. Mm-hmm. But it's a great game. It's a great game for physical activity, for socialization. And it's obvious it's how the game has exploded, how everyone is taking to it.
And it seemed like seniors have really jumped on it. And is that because there's not so much kind of scampering around? It's more, you're not like racing to the back line and so on, or what do you think it is?
Well, it is a relatively low impact game. And as we get older, that comes into play in a big way. I know I played a lot of competitive sports growing up, and some of those sports, as I got older, I just could not compete any longer at the level I wanted to. So having found pickleball, it was a steep learning curve, picked it up fairly quickly, and have had a lot of fun with it and been able to do it in my 60s, so to speak.
So you're into killer pickleball is what you're saying, as opposed to...
Well, sometimes, but it's fun. It's there's strategy to the game, and you want to set your opponents up for an opportunity to hit a winner, mm-hmm. and the like, and you play till you see an opening and then attack that opening. So sometimes it's a kill, sometimes it's a well-placed shot, sometimes it's a very soft shot to beat your opponents.
And from what I understand with pickleball, you can play, as you said, a little bit like badminton, where, it's not that difficult to get, like, hitting it back across the net and so on. So you can play at a kind of, bobo level, or you can play what sounds like at your level and still have fun playing it.
Oh, 100%. It's like I said, the learning curve is fairly steep. You're unsure when you start, and within a few days of playing, you've got rallying down, and you're bringing the ball back and forth with your opponents, and having a lot of fun with this. You can get into the game and play it at a decent level very quickly.
Now, I mentioned that seniors that's sometimes associated with pickleball, but I don't know if that's any longer the case. Who's playing pickleball these days?
In our membership locally in Manitoba here, our average age is approximately 58 years old, mm-hmm. and it's come down over the last couple of years, but by probably 2 years. We are pushing to develop the sport at the youth level. In fact, this week we are doing a clinic for 75 phys ed teachers at the SAG conference through the Manitoba Teachers Society. So we're pushing, as Pickleball Manitoba, we're pushing to get game introduced into schools, into youth programming at different levels. We did run a youth clinic very recently in Selkirk, and we've got a club being established in Winnipeg here who's building a facility we can touch on later. And I've had many discussions with their proprietor about introducing youth programming into that facility once it's operational.
Mm-hmm. Well, we'd like to hear what our radio listeners think about pickleball, whether it's a good game for kids, whether it's a good game for themselves. Give me a call, 204-780-0893. And Ted, just getting back to the teaching it in the schools, it seems like a fantastic sport in that there's not a ton of equipment. You can play it indoors or outdoors. And I guess with teaching the teachers, it just goes to show that it's not quite as mainstream as it might become. If you're
and I agree with you. It hasn't been mainstream to date, and we think that it's moving that direction. Obviously, there's a couple of pro leagues in the United States right now.
That's surprising.
Not so much.
Like a tennis tournament, you mean? Like with prizes and things?
Yeah, like they have pickleball tournaments, mm-hmm. The PPA and the APP. are the acronyms for the two different factions. And there's a pro tournament every week.
And in Winnipeg, when you first started Pickleball Manitoba, how many clubs did you have and how many do you have now?
Oh, I didn't. First of all, I didn't start Pickleball Manitoba. It was started by
when it was started,
a
yes.
great group of enthusiasts back in, I believe, 2016. And when I got involved in Pickleball Manitoba, we had one club associated with it, and that club was started by the founders of Pickleball Manitoba. By year end this year, we'll have 14 or 15 fully affiliated clubs in Manitoba.
And so now that there are 14 or 15, do you need more? I'm just thinking of Pickler, the U.S. company, expanding into Canada. Is that going to be good for pickleball or bad for pickleball? What do you think?
Well, the Pickler is a faction who is building facilities, and their plan is to build 65 facilities across Canada. And their focus, I believe, is going to be on Winnipeg and Toronto for their first two. So as far as Pickleball Manitoba is concerned, any faction that comes in and builds a facility that gives our members an opportunity to play in a dedicated location is fantastic. We'll have the Pickler whenever I don't believe they have a franchisee in place yet, but they're looking.
Yeah.
We have another entity called the Pickleball Club of Winnipeg, who is currently building an 8-court facility on the west side of the city. And we have Picklehawes on the east side of the city, who has 2 dedicated pickleball courts. So if we have 8 and the Pickler brought in another 8 and 2 in Picklehawes, we'd only have 18 courts, indoor dedicated courts in the city. And I'm certain we could use triple that and fill them.
And in which locations? Where would you build dedicated pickleball courts besides the ones you've just mentioned?
Well, relatively centralized locations always work. So you can draw. It's easy to draw players from all over the city. If we were doing multiple locations, obviously there would be. You might pick six areas of the city and try to put a good facility in each area. That would be ideal.
And you mentioned you were in Selkirk recently. Do you think that would support a pickleball court?
Well, there's a Selkirk Community Church. You may not have heard of them before, but they run a very strong pickleball program out of that church, and they draw people from the city, from the surrounding area around Selkirk. I mentioned Selkirk previously because we had recently run a youth clinic there, and we had 12, I believe, under 15-year-old athletes taking this clinic.
Yeah.
So we're strong throughout the province. We have got clubs, affiliated clubs from all over the province, and the game's being played in every corner, which is fantastic.
And how much does it cost to play pickleball?
It's a pretty cheap sport to play.
Yeah.
If you're playing outdoors and you can find a court to play at, all you need is a pair of runners, a paddle, and a wiffle ball.
Okay.
And you're going at it. It's not an expensive sport to get involved with by any means.
So the wiffle ball, that's the ball that people object to the noise?
It can be noisy, and there has been some pushback on the game regarding noise from different factions, yes.
But I guess having dedicated spaces to play would get rid of that problem.
I would agree, yeah, and strategically located courts so that we're not beside a densely populated area, so the noise doesn't carry into the housing and the like would be pretty good.
And so has the game evolved? I was reading about how it was invented by, a couple of families, some rainy day where they wanted to engage the whole family in a game, and so they did this sort of amalgam and called it pickleball. But has the actual game changed at all, or has the equipment evolved, or has it been pretty much the way it started?
Well, to my knowledge, originally back in Washington, the game started with a couple of plywood cutouts, and I believe a ball the dog was playing with, and it was a wiffle ball.
Right.
So today there are many paddle manufacturers, many types of technology for the paddle. So you're getting paddles that are specifically made for spin or power or control. The athletes are good. They train specifically for pickleball. So like any sport, it's progressed, and at the highest level, it is incredible to watch. And at the recreational level, it's a ton of fun, and it's easy to play.
Well, if anybody wants to get in on this conversation before we have to wrap it up, give us a call, 204-780-0893. And Ted, I wanted to ask you, what about what's the etiquette of pickleball? Are there a few things that you do or don't do that are kind of important for people to learn?
It's interesting you ask that, because the game is played predominantly without a referee, unless you're playing at the highest level of competition. And even at the highest level, there are still certain degrees of etiquette. Line calls and out of bounds calls and the like are called by the players themselves.
Right.
And the etiquette is you err on the side of the ball being in. So if you see a ball that's close, it hits the line, or you think it might be out, but you're not sure, then automatically you consider it as an in ball. And that's sort of a thing. It's a layer of trust between all opponents in the game, and just you be fair to the game and fair to your opponents.
Well, it's good. That's the sportsman-like thing to do, right? To think that is a game and it is fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, Ted, thank you very much for being with us. I think pickleball, it'll be interesting to see just how huge it gets in Manitoba. I hear you can go on pickleball cruises and stay at pickleball hotels. Who knows what's next?
Yes, exactly. It'll be worldwide very quickly.
Oh, well, enjoy your game if you have one today.
I just finished.
Oh, good. All right. Thanks for being with us.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
You too. Bye-bye. That's Ted Fardo. He is the president of Pickleball Manitoba. You're listening to just the last few minutes of Radio Noon. We've got time just to squeeze in one more little story. She's been one of the voices warning us about some of the biggest Canadian weather events over the decades. Now meteorologist Terry Lang is retiring from Environment and Climate Change Canada. CBC's Chelsea Cross spent some time with Lang to look back at her career.
There was never any doubt for Terry Lang that she was going to get into the sciences.
As a kid, I always loved science, anything science. I was glued to books and volcanoes, earthquakes, space, tornadoes, hurricanes, anything like that. I loved science. So I was really drawn to that. So when I went into high school and we got more into sciences, I knew that was the way I was going to go. I was leaning a little bit towards astronomy. And then when I realized sort of what was required for that, I kind of went more towards the weather.
Back in the late 80s, she says only 10% of meteorologists were women. She made her way from her home city of Regina to take her training out east in Montreal, and then on to postings in Winnipeg and then Saskatoon. Then came a 17-year stint in Kelowna before she came back to Saskatoon to finish off her 36-year career. Along the way, she had to contend with sexual harassment and disrespect from male colleagues.
Just kind of keep your head down and do your job and be competent, and then you gain people's respect, and eventually attitudes change.
There are a lot of storms that remind Terry Lang of her formative years as a meteorologist, like the Stanley Park windstorm of 2006, where thousands of trees toppled. She was the emergency preparedness meteorologist on the job.
Down into the house. With the ferocity some say was unprecedented, hurricane force winds struck the BC coast in the middle of the night, laying waste to homes and neighborhoods.
Me and my dad were in the living room, and we just heard the tree smash into the house, and we kind of ducked down, and things were flying all over the place.
I thought I was going to die, and I thought my brother and my dad were dead.
Then, years later, she found herself back in Saskatoon.
There's a few doozy good storms. The one in the November 2020, I believe it was the one that came through the city and it delayed the election.
Well, wow, just when you think 2020 couldn't get any more challenging, it did. Look outside, and the only way out is to shovel your way out. It's also the civic election, so talk about a perfect storm. We just got off the phone with Saskatoon's fire chief, who is saying hold off on voting until a bit later, maybe even this afternoon, to give crews time to clear the streets. We will keep you up to date this morning.
And yeah, that was a pretty intense storm. It was one of those ones that we were blessed in that the model guidance, the weather model guidance that we use was particularly good for that storm. And that's not always the case, but it was consistent, and that allowed me to work with a lot of officials, especially in the city here, to get people prepared for that, and then get people through it and in the aftermath of it. So it was a very interesting storm.
A lot of Terry Lang's job is talking to decision makers and giving them the best information of what is going to happen and the worst case scenario. It's a mix of using weather models and that common sense she's gained over the decades.
Often we hear about everything that went bad, the people that were stranded on the highway, or the people that get caught somewhere, but we never hear about the people that heeded the warnings and stayed. And that's hard as a meteorologist, because you want to hear about the people. Oh, I heard your warning, so I stayed home and I didn't travel. So but you hear about the ones that didn't, and you always think, well, what could I have done differently? What could I have said differently that would have helped those people? Or could I have said something different? Would they have changed their mind? It's hard to know.
And the stakes are that high. There have been fatalities stemming from weather events Lang has tracked.
Plane crashes that involve weather, tornadoes, plow winds. You can also get flooding events where people drown.
Lang made it her mission to warn people when weather that could seriously hurt you was on the way. And when weather brought destruction or fatalities, it made her feel helpless.
And you're sick. You're sick to your stomach. You're sick to your stomach.
Lang has a few success stories that keep her feeling like she's done her job.
I think about the Didsbury tornado.
Hitting a rural area between Calgary and Red Deer, on the ground, the aftermath seems unreal.
It almost looks like airplanes crashed here, but what it is the total destruction of 2 homes.
Just because we knew that the atmosphere was capable of doing what it was going to do, you don't know when and if it actually will happen. But we had the watches out ahead of time. We had the warnings in place. People heard the warnings. People went into their basement and they survived.
I could just see that it was, a giant tornado heading straight for me. Thank goodness for the emergency alert system. Otherwise, I think I would be dead. And I just jumped in my car with my dog.
So those are the types of victories. They might be small, but maybe to those people, because they heard those warnings, because that's what we do for a living, that's what we're supposed to do. Maybe, it saved their lives, and, you're not patting yourself on the back too much, because you know that the next day when you see somebody that, well, you didn't get that temperature right yesterday, or was just, shoveled 5 centimeters of mainly sunny off my driveway. That type of, we get those our entire career. So
Lang has seen a lot of change over the years, from being called Environment Canada to Environment and Climate Change Canada now. She says people ask her all the time about climate change, and it's not easy to say one storm is caused by climate change. It's about the patterns and how they're changing over time. Another big change, that 10% of women in her field is now trending towards more than 50%, something that Lang is very proud to have been a part of. And even though she's moving on, she can't let go of her love of the job.
It's hard to think, okay, I'm probably not going to be doing this anymore, but I'm always going to be looking at the weather. Even when I'm on vacation, no matter where I am, I'm always looking at the weather. I can't not look at the weather. It's in my blood. It's part of what I do.
Thanks to CBC's Chelsea Cross for putting that together for us. And now in studio with me is guest host Corey Funk. He'll be lording it over up to speed this afternoon.
Yes, I will. And it's going to be a fun one. We're going to have the owner of a new music venue in South Osborne that just opened its doors this past weekend. They're going to tell us a bit of a funny story from when they first opened and just what it's all about. It's a music venue by musicians for musicians.
Like co-op or something? No.
Not officially a co-op, just kind of it's musicians that own it, and they're really hoping that it's musicians that benefit from it.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's Corey Funk, and you can hear Corey on Up to Speed this afternoon from 3 to 6. And thanks for being with us on Radio Noon. And my thanks to Marshall Hodgins and Wendy Parker and Kevin Nipatebo for keeping it all together. And I'll see you again, not tomorrow. I think you'll see Corey tomorrow. And I'll be back with you Thursday and Friday. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to call in on our call-in, 780-204-780-0893. That's tomorrow with Corey. Talk to you soon. Bye.